Something just happened that's unprecedented in American sports. Basketball players went out on a wildcat strike over political issues outside of the league. This was a wonderful demonstration of the power of labor. The owners were surprised, but under the circumstances they had little choice but to be conciliatory. Now, I'm not saying that they were all being insincere. I don't doubt that some of the owners really do care about police brutality and racial injustice. The question is whether we should have to rely on the individual rich people who own these teams having the feelings that we hope they have. Sports teams are an important part of the communities where they're based. Should decisions about them really depend on the whims of individual owners? In fact, why should teams have owners at all? Again, we should stress the uniqueness of the situation. You have to go back to 1994 to find the last baseball strike, and as far as I can tell, doing a little research on this, I don't think that there's ever been a strike in the NBA, although there have certainly been employer lockouts. The players could get away with protesting in such a militant way because they were together, exercising their power as workers, and because the political atmosphere has, in many ways, changed for the better in the last few years. Look at what happened to Colin Kaepernick when he protested in a far milder way, and he ended up getting blacklisted for his troubles. Part of the reason the owners could get away with treating Kaepernick that way is that even famous and well-paid athletes, never mind ordinary workers, have very few protections against bosses punishing them for engaging in political action. Kaepernick was able to collect some settlement money along with Eric Reed, which is much better than the situation that most people who get fired for political stands end up in. But to even have grounds to sue in the first place, he had to allege collusion. If individual owners had just made individual decisions for political reasons, he wouldn't have had the same case. The deeper question lurking in all of this is the one that I raised in a Jacobin article last winter, which is this: why do sports teams have owners in the first place? Why are key decisions about everything from hiring players to whether to have a racist logo like the Washington football team, to whether to abandon the fans who bleed for their teams by moving to an entirely different community? Why are all of these decisions in the hands of wealthy individuals? Reality often falls short of this ideal, but we at least say we prioritize democracy when we pick the people who make the laws. Why shouldn't we use democracy in sports and entertainment? There are alternatives to the current system. Last year, Bernie Sanders was confronting Major League Baseball over their plan to abandon a lot of their minor league teams, and Eric Levitz had a very good idea on Twitter. This is what he said: all sports leagues should be nationalized, and cities and surrounding communities should get to elect their team's general managers. This would surely increase voter turnout and civic engagement. Also, would have kept the Whalers from abandoning 9-year-old me for Carolina. And this isn't that utopian. We could look at the real-life example of the Green Bay Packers, which already has something at least approximating ownership of the team by the community that roots for them. The NFL put in place rules a long time ago to stop other teams from following the Packers' example and going ownerless, but we could get around that and implement what we can call the Levitz plan from that tweet by exercising the power of eminent domain. Of course, I'm a socialist. I want to socialize all kinds of industries. So of course, when I see wealthy owners watching games from luxury boxes literally high above the rest of the crowd, my ideological instinct is to start muttering things like nationalization and we are the 99%. But you don't have to be a socialist to see why sports teams should be publicly owned. For one thing, a lot of these teams get their stadiums built with public funds already. That means that we're already socializing one of their most important costs. Why shouldn't we socialize the whole thing? And they can't complain about their private property rights being violated by eminent domain without massive hypocrisy. The same power is often used to build those stadiums in the first place. In Atlanta, where I live, the Falcons Mercedes-Benz Stadium was built by demolishing, among many other properties. The Friendship Baptist Church, which is the oldest Black Baptist church in Atlanta, the congregation had to find a new home in 2014. Or think about all the exorbitant costs that go into enjoying your favorite teams. While most of us probably aren't getting tickets right now, even if we could afford them, we don't because of the health situation with the coronavirus. But normally, to do that, you'd have to shell out hundreds of dollars just on seats, never mind concessions, merchandising, and even parking. Even when we're watching from home, we're bombarded with a ludicrous number of ads, and we get stuck accessing events sometimes through pay-per-view. All of this exists because owners have to turn a profit. That's their incentive. And also because they want to finance their yachts. If we took sports teams out of private hands and removed the market from the equation, the cost would be dramatically reduced. Finally, one advantage of bringing the teams into public ownership is that as public employees, athletes would enjoy far more free speech protections. At a time when police are working with right-wing vigilantes in Portland and the Department of Homeland Security is shoving people into unmarked vans, I can understand that the job security of professional athletes might seem like one of the lowest priorities in terms of freedom of speech. Even in terms of workplace issues, most people have far more reason to worry about whatever recourse their boss could bring down on them for taking a stand at work than highly skilled, far less easily replaceable professional athletes do. But what we saw with the NBA strike was that seeing anyone in a prominent position exercising their labor rights and taking a political stand can be inspiring for lots of people who are not in those positions. I should acknowledge that not everybody finds it inspiring, and there are a few different reasons for that. Some of the shut up and dribble reaction that you get from some people when things like this happens arises from political views with which I deeply disagree, but there's also a really understandable human impulse at work there. Most Americans aren't tuning in to watch sports to see politics. If anything, we generally tune in order to tune out of whatever's bothering us, either in our personal lives or in the news. But that's not a reason to keep things the way they are. It's just the opposite. By taking something as important as sports teams out of the hands of a few millionaires and billionaires, that actually means that we can deprioritize the interests of the rich and spend more time and less cash on the actual game.